what's interesting about Wi-Fi 6, and the reason I'm going down this road is to begin to talk about what it means to our industry. So when I got started in the industry back in the early 90s, everything was about the freaking cable. Can you tell how much I like pulling cable? I still do it. Believe it or not, I still pull cable. Anyway, so I mean, I pulled miles of cable. I mean, literally, I have pulled miles of cable, maybe even over 100 miles of cable, maybe even hundreds of miles of cable. And so everything was a cable. Every time you had to have an endpoint, it meant there was a cable, whether it was a voice endpoint, which might have been just a Cat3 voice cable, or whether it was a PC, like a computer endpoint, Ethernet endpoint, which would have been a Cat5 or later was a Cat5e. Well, the problem we're getting into is a little bit similar to what those of us who are older enough to remember the old 386, 486, 586 days, where every few years, what you have is not good enough anymore. Now, amazingly, Cat 5e had an extremely long run. But now Cat 6 is pretty much the standard. 5e, sometimes you still see it being called for, like in the independent contracting that I do, sometimes it still have tickets that say you can run a 5e because it's just, the speed's not that important. But 6 is the new thing. Well, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but now I'm seeing affordable switches and network interfaces that are the 2.5 gig or 5 gig or even I think I saw a 40 gig connector. Isn't that insane? 40 gig. Now these are copper. This is not fiber. These are copper network interfaces. And so now Cat 6 doesn't cut it. So imagine, and this is actually kind of based on a true story. Imagine that you are an IT director for a large organization, and 3 years ago, you just spent a gigantic amount of money to have the entire organization upgraded from Cat 5 or 5e up to 6. And now you've got the business department coming to you with requirements for 10 gig. Because, like, for instance, like a lot of Macs now, if you go to buy like a Mac, not the MacBook, but what's the one that's the brick, like a Studio, they come with like 10 gig NICs. So that's great, but if you're going to run it on a Cat 6 cable, if it's short enough, you might get away with it. But for the most part, it's not supported, right? So now you imagine that you're that IT director and you just spent all this money convincing your business stakeholders to drop all that money to upgrade from Cat 5e to 6, maybe 3 years ago. And now you're got a dilemma. So do we go to Cat 6a, which will support that? Or do we go to fiber? So this is some of the things these guys are up against. So the reason I bothered to bring up the Wi-Fi is because this IT director for this large college in DC that I was talking to about something unrelated, but he was relaying this to me, is that he's considering, and I'm sure others are, whether investing the money in Wi-Fi would be a smarter approach, because even if you have to turn around and upgrade antennas, and even if you have to turn around and upgrade the cable that connects the antenna, meaning the access point, at least you're only replacing the cable from the switch to the access point and not a cable to every single, cubicle or classroom or dormitory room that requires a cable upgrade. So you're talking about really large amounts of money, and it's causing these IT decision makers now to look at the Wi-Fi 6 and the Wi-Fi 7 as viable options to the to hard cabling. You could even go fiber if you want, but that comes with all kinds. I mean, fiber is expensive. It's not easy to work with in the field. It's tricky to splice in the field. It's delicate. It requires expensive network adapters. Whereas Wi-Fi, I mean, granted, you do have to upgrade the individual machines, Wi-Fi receive, the Wi-Fi antenna in the machine. But it's a much easier and certainly more scalable approach to remedy this dilemma of the trap of trying to get caught up on the cable speeds, every 5 years. Like I said, back in the 5 and 5E days, those things had a long run. People were using 100 megabit adapters for a long time. And then 1 gig showed up. Gosh, I don't know when was that, 15 years ago. And then 1 gig was, I mean, even today, 1 gig is still pretty standard. But now we're starting to see 2, 5, 10, and probably, maybe in a few years, a 40 gig adapter is going to be affordable. But, you're going to be limited to what the switch and the cable can handle. So I'm just kind of pointing that out, that if you hadn't thought about that, it might be worth thinking about and spending maybe more time paying attention to IT. I'm sorry, paying more attention to Wi-Fi and where it's going in the industry. But I think we'll kind of move off of that. And then we'll move into now the other one I would talk about is 5G. Now, the 5G just kind of puts a complicated spin on everything I just said. So 5G is kind of like, in my mind, from whatever. Now, I'm not a Wi-Fi expert. I'm not a 5G expert. I'm just kind of sharing what I know, combined with what I hear, combined with what I hear from my day job. And that is that 5G has this extremely low latency, which makes it really great for automation. It makes it great for Internet of Things. It makes it great for robotics, and it makes it great for remote control. So much so, and I guess it does it better than Wi-Fi, but so much so, Wi-Fi, 5G, because it is so low in latency, that apparently surgeons can actually remotely operate from however many miles apart. So maybe you've got a renowned brain surgeon in Seattle. With the right 5G and the right network, they can manipulate a robotic set of surgical instruments somewhere, maybe, in Houston or something like that, so that they're actually performing the surgery, from 2,000 miles away, because 5G allows that. So then this just complicates everything. A minute ago I was saying, hey, we're just going to go to Wi-Fi 6 and 7, and then we won't have to worry about cable anymore, and everything's going to be great, and sunshines and smiles. Well, now we got to look at 5G and decide how that's going to work. And, is 5G going to try to nudge its way into the Wi-Fi space? Do they live harmoniously? I will tell you in my own personal experience, one thing I've noticed that 5G has done that has really cemented in my mind where there's a place for everything at the right time is that, so for instance, I have like a T-Mobile phone. It's a Samsung Galaxy 20. It has 5G, and it's on T-Mobile. If I'm out in my front yard, it screams, it flies. But if I just so much as come in my front door and walk into the center of my house, it just, I mean, it's just really, in fact, a lot of times when I come into the house, I'll pick up my iPhone, which is on 4G, because it's actually faster, Now, I don't have to use 5G and 4G in the house because I've got Wi-Fi. So that makes me realize that there's a place for each, and we have to decide what makes sense in each workflow or in each use case. 5G works great if you're in the automobile or if you're outside, but the minute you walk into a building, 5G just can't penetrate structures very easily. It's just that's its Achilles heel. But what will probably, I guess, live in harmony with maybe at some point, or assuming that they don't try to duke it out for domination, is that you can actually have 5G microcells within an organization. So you've got an office building, or maybe let's forget the office building. Let's say we've got a manufacturing floor. All right. So in that manufacturing floor, you have all these different machines that need to be automated. And of course, again, we don't want to get stuck on that whole having to run the cable to everything. And a lot of these machines need to get moved around. People reconfigure production floors all the time, right? I'm seeing something interesting in the comments. I want to come to that in just a minute. So people move things around the floor all the time. So Wi-Fi and 5G give you that flexibility, but 5G's got that extremely low latency. Now, I don't know I haven't read enough to know whether 6, 6E, and 7 are addressing that, but I just feel like either they're going to learn to work together or they'll borrow from each other to create one unified technology, or we'll have a combination of the two, the 5G and the Wi-Fi living together. But for now, assuming that most organizations don't have 5G microcells in their office space, it kind of means that to get the best of both worlds, you need your 5G when you're outside or when you're driving, and then you need your Wi-Fi, a good Wi-Fi when you're inside. And we can come back and talk about Wi-Fi more, but I want to take a break here and go